Hello, this is Tony Heller from RealClimateScience.com. Climate fraudsters have upped their pace to fast and furious. I'm doing my best to keep up with them. This is the fourth video I've made today. When air moves from higher elevations to lower elevations, it compresses and warms up, similar to the way a bicycle pump heats up when the air is compressed. The most extreme example of this occurred at Spearfish, South Dakota on January 22, 1943. Between 7 o'clock and 7:02 a.m., Spearfish warmed up from -4 degrees up to 45 degrees. This was caused by downslope winds, which occur frequently during the winter on the eastern slopes of the Rockies. These rapidly warming winds during the winter are frequently known as Chinooks. By 9 o'clock it had warmed up to 54 degrees, and then the wind stopped and temperatures plummeted back down to -4 degrees by 9:27. A few years ago, UN climate spokesman and high school dropout Leo DiCaprio observed Chinook winds in Alberta. He declared it was due to global warming and said it was a scary vision of things to come. It's terrifying, and it's what people are talking about all over the world, and it's simply just going to get worse. His absurd comments attracted widespread derision from the people of Calgary who live through these sort of winds all the time. But downslope heating doesn't just occur in the winter, it can also occur during heat waves in the summer. On June 27th of last year, I tweeted this: "Tomorrow, Portland and Seattle will experience a few hours of very hot adiabatic downslope winds coming from the east, which the press will describe as unprecedented heat caused by global warming." And like clockwork, my predictions were correct. The Washington Post said, "Pacific Northwest heatwave was virtually impossible without climate change, scientists find." The unprecedented episode was made at least 150 times as likely by rising temperatures, according to a rapid analysis. There seems to be a whole industry of people who make up fake statistics like this after each weather event. Oregon tied their record of 119 degrees Fahrenheit, which was set twice in 1898. Prineville, Oregon hit 119 degrees on July 29, 1898, and Pendleton repeated that on August 18, 1898. 1898 was a very extreme year. Shortly after Valentine's Day, South Carolina had one of the largest wildfires in U.S. history. 3 million acres burned up in just over 24 hours during February. If this happened now, the Washington Post would say, "Scientists say this would have been impossible without global warming," except that it occurred in 1898. Colorado also had their largest forest fires on record in 1898, with the entire northwest quadrant of the state on fire. Many people died from the heat in eastern cities during the heat waves of 1898. 1898 also brought a devastating drought to California, a typhoon in the Philippines which killed 7,000 people, and some of the largest bushfires in Tasmania's history. Out-of-control forest fires in California threatened the largest trees in the world. But back to the heat wave of last June. Washington State did break their all-time temperature record by 2 degrees. And Canada also broke their all-time temperature record. Downslope winds in British Columbia brought the temperature up to 121 degrees Fahrenheit. Now let's take a look at the most extraordinary summer downslope heating. On June 17th, Santa Barbara, California averages 74 degrees Fahrenheit. But on June 17th, 1917, downslope winds brought the temperature up to 115 degrees. There were also massive forest fires raging around that part of California at the same time. But that wasn't Santa Barbara's most extraordinary heat wave. On June 17, 1859, Santa Barbara got up to an incredible 133 degrees. At 1 o'clock in the afternoon of the 17th, a burning wind came upon us from the northwest and smote us with terror. At 2 o'clock, the thermometer exposed to this wind rose to 133 degrees of Fahrenheit. At 5 o'clock, it had fallen to 122 degrees, and at 7 o'clock, it stood at 77 degrees. A fisherman who was out at sea came back with his arms all blistered. Many calves, rabbits, and birds died of suffocation. The greatest losses are among the vegetables. The fruit trees are all burned. The pears and apples have been literally cooked. These winds occurred for 3 days on the 17th, 18th, and 19th of June 1859. Temperatures were near 120 degrees over much of the coast of California. The temperature of 133 degrees at normally cool Santa Barbara would have been a world's record temperature. And nobody would have been foolish enough to blame it on global warming. A few weeks later was the Carrington event, the largest solar storm ever recorded. The northern lights were seen all the way to the equator. Telegraph communications were shut down all over the world. If this happened now, it would be catastrophic for communications. There was also massive flooding going on the Mississippi River and the Ohio River. Later that year, a massive storm off the coast of Wales brought down the Royal Charter and killed more than 600 people. 626 vessels were wrecked by the storm. The heat wave of 1859 in California continued into October. The coast of California got up to 110 degrees in the shade during October 1859. This was followed in December by some of the worst flooding in Southern California history. It was estimated that 1 foot of water fell within 24 hours. The rivers overflowed the lowlands, doing considerable damage. The starving cattle and sheep, unsheltered from the pitiless rain chilled through, died by the thousands during the storm. June 17, 1859 brought record heat to Santa Barbara, California, but there's been a lot of bad weather on other June 17ths as well. On June 17, 1882 was one of the deadliest tornado outbreaks in Iowa's history. And on June 17, 1782, immense damage was done by storms all over America, particularly on the New England coast. These claims made by experts in the Washington Post were simply nonsense. They had nothing to do with science. The downslope heating at Santa Barbara, California on June 17, 1859 was far larger and far more anomalous than what occurred in the Pacific Northwest during June of last year. Which brings me back to Richard Feynman. Science is the belief in the ignorance of the experts. Toto's been pulling back the curtain on these climate scamsters and frauds for the past 14 years. You can visit him, Kyrie, Caesar, Upala, and Toki on the web at realclimatescience.com.